Alright, y'all, so we're going to talk about how to find x and y intercepts from graphs, tables, and equations. So the first one, you should be very familiar with finding the x and y intercepts from a graph. So for A, we have that our x-intercept is at 2, 0, and that our y-intercept crosses at 0, 8. For graph B, we do not have an x-intercept. Our x-intercept is none. It never is going to cross our x-axis, but we do have a y-intercept, and this is at 0, 0.55. And for graph C, we cross the x-axis right here at negative 0.5, 0, and our y-intercept is going to cross at 0, -1. Okay, so that is finding them from a graph. Now, if we move to tables, the biggest thing to remember here is what is happening when we have an x-intercept and we have a y-intercept. So when we have an x-intercept, we need to think about what our y is doing. So when we have an x-intercept and we're on the x-axis, y is going to be 0. So in order to find our x-intercept, we need to figure out in our table where y is 0. So right here we see that y is 0. So we know that our x-intercept for graph D, our x-intercept is at -4, 0. And then when we have our y-intercept, we need to think about what's happening with x. So if we have a y-intercept and we're on the y-axis, our x value is going to be 0. So in this situation, our y-intercept is going to be 0, 2. And the same thing for E. We need to first look at when y is 0. That means we're going to be on the x-axis, so it's going to be at 3, 0. And our y-intercept is going to be at 0, 9. Alright, so moving along to equations, and one other thing to remember is that the term x-intercepts can also be referred to as roots and solutions. So in questions on the quiz or tests or homework even, we could ask you to find the roots or the solutions, and they all mean the same thing. They all are x-intercepts, or where the graph will cross the x-axis. So moving along to F. So now when we're trying to find it from an equation, again, we need to think about if we're trying to find our x-intercept, what does that mean? What is y doing? So in this case, if we're finding our x-intercept, y is going to be 0. So we're going to set our function equal to 0, and we're going to need to solve. So in solving this, the first step is going to be to factor. So this is going to factor to x minus 3 times x plus 1. Set those both equal to 0, and we have x equals 3 and x equals -1. Okay, so that means that our graph is going to cross the x-axis at 3, 0, and at -1, 0. And for our y-intercept, we know that we have a y-intercept when x is 0, so we're going to plug in 0 into our function, and we're going to get that our y-intercept is at 0, -3. Alright, so for the next one, for graph G, we have a log function, so same thing. If we have an x-intercept, we're going to take our function and we're going to set it equal to 0. So when we set it equal to 0, we need to first exponentiate. Our base here is 10, so we're going to take this to the 10th. We're going to have a base of 10, and these are going to become our exponents. 10 to the 0th power is 1. These are going to simplify, and we're left with x plus 4 on this side. So we're going to get x equals -3. So our x-intercept is at the point -3, 0. Our y-intercept, we're going to plug in 0. So we're going to have log of 0 plus 4, which we can type in our calculators. And when we do that, we're going to get 0.602. So our y-intercept is going to be 0, 0.602. And for our last one, for graph H, for our x-intercept, we're going to set our function equal to 0. So we're going to have 0 equals this function. Very first step, we need to add 1 to both sides to solve. And then in order to take the log, we need to make sure that we just have x, or 2 to the x by itself. So we need to divide by 3. So we're going to have 0.3, repeating, equals 2 to the x. Now, next thing we need to do is take log base 2 of both sides. So our x value is going to equal log base 2 of 0.3, which is -1.599. So our x-intercept would be -1.599, 0. Okay, and then the very last part is finding the y-intercept for this graph, or for this equation, excuse me. So y-intercept, we're going to plug 0 in for x. So we're going to have 3 times 2 to the 0th power minus 1. 2 to the 0th is 1. So we're going to have that we have a y-intercept at 0, 2.